Hi there and welcome. I'm Jane, one of the cash flow experts here at Float. Thanks for tuning in. In this session, I'll walk you through how to get started with Float and show you what's possible when it comes to cash flow forecasting. So we're just going to jump right in. When you first log into Float, you're going to land in this page, and this is the main cash flow tab, and it's probably where you'll spend most of your time. At the top here, we've got our graph, and it's divided into three sections. You've got the section on the left here with the black line, and that is pulling through all your historic actuals. So these will be based on the figures that actually happened. And then we've got your red line here, which is for today, and then the blue line, which is your future forecast. And this will be made up of any invoices, bills, bank transactions that are pulling through from your accounting software, and also any budgets that you enter into Float, and we'll cover those a little bit later. Float is designed to sync directly with your accounting platform. It will do so once every 24 hours. However, if you've just been doing a whole load of work and you want to pull that through to Float, you can trigger a manual sync at any point, and that's from this little symbol up the top right here. And I'm just going to do one, even although it was only 2 hours ago. I'll just show you how quick it is to actually sync the information through. We'll let that go in the background, and in the meantime, in fact, that's it reloaded now. That's the sync completed now, so we should be showing up-to-date information from our accounting platform. So if we move down here, beneath the graph, we've got our main table, and this is split into sections. We've got income at the top and then costs. We do have a people cost section here, but I'm just going to collapse that and we'll cover that later on. All the lines that you're seeing here will be pulling through your chart of accounts from your accounting platform, and these will initially be shown in alphabetical order. So one of the first things that you can do, and we recommend, is to streamline your table. And you can do that from the View Options button up the top here. If we click on that and then down to Personalize Accounts, this will allow you to do several things. First of all, you can change the order that the accounts show in the table, and that's just a simple click, drag and drop action. It might be that you want some of the accounts that you will be working with more at the top. For instance, wages, we might want that in a more prominent position, and we can pop that up here. You can also create groups if you have a really long chart of accounts. That can be very helpful. So for instance, we might want to create a group for our office costs here. So it's just really a case of just selecting the accounts that you want and then grouping rows and giving it a name. And what this will do will create a heading in the main table, and you will have a drop down, so you'll still be able to see your accounts underneath it, but it just allows you to tidy things up. And we might want to move that group just a bit further down the table. We'll pop it at the bottom here. It might be that you're not seeing all your chart of accounts, and so if you are missing any, it's more than likely because they don't have any value. Currently, Float will automatically pull through any accounts with value, and they'll be added to the table, but any others that are empty will be stored, and this is how you can add them in. So if we go to Add Account, and then we'll have a drop down just showing all the different accounts that we have. As you can see, there's quite a lot more here than what I have in my table. Ones that can be missed, for instance, corporation tax, because it might be a few months since we've actually had a value in that one. So we're just going to add that one in. And again, it'll show at the top, but we can move it down the table a little bit. So that's your income and your costs. There is an option for combining rows, and all that really does is merges the accounts. So it can be similar to grouping, but instead of seeing the heading with all the drop down and the individual accounts, you will just see one line in the table, and the accounts will actually be merged together. And some people might use that if they have maybe some smaller accounts they don't need to see the detail of, and it just means that you can merge those, and it won't clutter up your table too much. So just jumping back into the main screen here. When you're doing your initial setup, you want to make sure that the bank accounts that we're pulling through are the correct ones. So we've got access to all the bank accounts and credit cards that you have in your accounting software, and this is from where you can actually choose which ones that you want to appear in the cash flow. So it might be that you have a savings account with money that's ring fenced and you want to switch that off. That's absolutely fine. And similarly, credit cards, some people don't want to see all the detail of their credit cards and they don't want the balance included, and you can switch those off from here. So that can be done at any point. All the cells are clickable in Float. So if you are zooming down your table and you want to see what makes up the sales figure for May, we can click in there. You'll be able to see full invoice payments, part ones here, and you can click further into each invoice just to get a little bit more detail. In terms of invoices and bills, we do pull these through automatically, and they'll be positioned in your cash flow according to their expected payment dates. We can also see upcoming items from one of these two tabs up here. If we zoom into invoices due, you can see we've got a little yellow triangle here, and that's really just to tell you that something has gone past its expected date. So looking at the table down here, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. There are a few options with what you can do in Float. Because these ones haven't been paid yet, we can actually move them in the cash flow. So for instance, this one for 12th of March, it's quite a bit overdue. We can actually, if we know this one is going to be paid maybe at the beginning of July, we can move it, save the new date, and then Float will just move it in the cash flow. So it's really just looking at when the cash movement is happening. You can also, if you have an older invoice, perhaps you know the client isn't going to pay that, you can toggle it off. And another useful feature, you can actually split invoices and bills. So where we have this larger one, maybe our client has agreed they want to pay in installments rather than one payment. We can split it by value or by percentage, and then we would just put the percentage amounts in here. So if we split that down into 3 payments, and then you could just put the dates of when you expect those payments to be made. They will be split a month apart automatically, but if you know it's going to be different dates, then you can absolutely do that. And then what Float will do is split that invoice 3 ways across your cash flow. Again, just showing you when that expected movement is due to happen. So moving back into the main cash flow tab, invoices and bills are great. We know we can see them in the cash flow, but that's often only part of the picture. And to complete the picture of your cash flow, you maybe want to enter budgets. Now, budgets in Float are just placeholders. So it's you telling Float, okay, I have rent to pay on the 7th of the month and I want that factored into my calculations, even although I don't have an invoice for it. So that's where the budgets come in. And budgets can be particularly handy for things like sales, where you know what sales you're likely to make, or you have expectations for that, but again, you don't have an invoice, bill, or bank transaction. So in Float, you can enter multiple budgets in different ways. If we look under sales here, we can see we've got a couple of budgets that we've entered, and this is our expectation of what we're expecting to be receiving. And what Float will do is it adds up the total of all the budgets that you enter, and it will use that against the main account here. And we're seeing 2 figures because we're looking at actual on the left and budgets on the right. If we click into the cell, we can see exactly what makes up that 14,000. It's a collection of invoices and bills here. Some of these are actually overdue. But if we go back to the budgets, how Float will work the cell is it always chooses the highest value. So in this case, it's going to be our actual figure. But in many cases, if we look forward to July, the budget is the largest, and that's what Float is going to use. And you can see it's filling up with the actuals as they're coming through, so there's never any double counting. The best way to think of budgets is a bit like an empty bucket, and they will fill up with the actuals as they come through. Once a month comes to an end, any budgets drop away. So when we're looking at historic figures, it will always be the actual figures that happened and not the budget figures. In order to enter budgets, there are a couple of ways you can do that. We can use the big blue Add button here, and we do have a spreadsheet data tool. It doesn't upload a spreadsheet, but it will allow you to copy and paste figures in. So if you know that you have figures for your corporation tax, you know what that's likely to be, you can paste those in and it will immediately put a figure into the cash flow. It's a little bit more limited, so if you want to add in more detail, the best way to do that is via the table. And I'm going to show you how to do that just now. So if we go down here, maybe we've got some general expenses we want to add in. Hovering beside the line will, this blue plus sign will pop up. If we click that, it comes up with our budget options. Now there's a few here. Auto budget, this is our set and forget. So it's great if you know that you maybe have a regular amount that might change over time. What this will do is you can tell Float to use your last month's totals or your average of your last 3 months. And then once the month comes to an end, Float looks at what the figures have been and it will readjust your budget going forward. So that could be quite a useful one. The one that you'll probably use mostly is repeating, and that's purely because it gives you the most flexibility. It will allow you to set different repeating patterns. So if you have a budget that isn't monthly but maybe weekly or quarterly, you can certainly set that in Float. You can set your date, and you can also set an end date as to when that budget will finish. The beauty of these budgets is that they are editable. So if you want to put in a budget for sales, but you know you're likely to be needing to change that and edit it as you get a bit more information, a repeating budget is what you want to use. It also gives you an option to increase or decrease each month. So if it was a sales budget you're entering and you're likely to be looking to increase your sales by a certain percentage each month, you'll be able to model that here, and then that budget will be popped into the cash flow. Next one on the list is one-off. And these are great for any, pretty much what it says on the tin, one-off expenses or costs or income. Maybe it'll be a load of investment you're expecting through, or a large purchase. And finally, linked budgets. These are budgets that you can set as a percentage of an existing budget in the cash flow. So it allows you to set a percentage of multiple budgets actually, and they will always track to the source budgets. So for instance, you might want to set your advertising and marketing costs as 3% of your sales budget. If your sales budget changes, that will track through to this linked budget. So I'm going to enter a quick budget here just to show you how easy it is. I'm going to do it under advertising and marketing. I already have a couple of budgets under here, and you can see these are adding up and showing here, but I want to add another one in. So I'm just hovering over and clicking on the blue plus sign and then using a repeating budget. So I know this is a subscription that I pay each month, and I know the amount, but I could use the last month's total or the average of the last 3 months. This isn't going to be accurate for me here because I already am breaking my budgets down, so I really just want to put in the exact figure. And I know the date in the month that this is paid. It's always good to be accurate with your dates, especially if you know that something will be paid on a specific one. If it's something like sales that might trickle in throughout the month, you probably want to look at putting your budget in at the end of the month, just so it doesn't have that cash impact from the first. So it's going to be monthly on the 6th. I'm not going to put an end date in, I'm just going to add it in here. So you can see here, that's another line added in. It's always added alphabetically here. If you need to make any changes to a repeating budget, it's really straightforward to do. You just click anywhere in the blue line, and I can make individual changes to months, to amounts, to dates, or I can change the entire repeating schedule. So although it might take a little while to get your budgets in there, once they're in, they'll pretty much take care of themselves with just a little bit of updating. Once you feel you have all your budgets in place and your cash flow is looking pretty accurate, we'll move on to scenarios. Now this is your base forecast, and it should always be kept as your most realistic, your most likely to happen. But we do have the option to play around with scenarios, and it's great for modelling certain circumstances. So in order to set up a scenario, you just click up here where we've got base, and there's already one being set up. In this case, we've set up, we want to model the expense of taking on a new member of staff and maybe some sales that they might be expecting to bring in. So we'll just slip in here and show you how that would look. So what we've done here is we've just added extra budgets in for the things that pertain to this situation. So for instance, we've got extra wages. We know taking on this new part-time person, we're going to have extra wages to pay, and we've entered a budget for a new laptop for them. And there's also an expectation that they're going to bring in some sales for our company. So we've added some sales figures in here. Now this will immediately set another line on the graph, and you can see at the point where this scenario starts, where the budgets are entered, this is where the lines start to diverge. So it's showing us what could happen to our cash flow if this situation occurred. And we can immediately see, okay, it's going to be a little bit of a hit to our company, especially with the salaries. But over time, if we move forward, hopefully this will turn into a positive situation for our company, and we can see maybe it's not quite the right time, but it does allow you to be able to make those decisions. In order to set up a scenario, it's really straightforward. You just create scenario here. and we can set it for pretty much anything. We're going to do an increase in sales. And you just choose a colour to distinguish it from your blue baseline and create. So this takes you back into the cash flow, and as you can see, if we hover over the graph, we've got two lines, one for our base and one for our new scenario, but they're both exactly the same because we've not entered any budgets at the moment. So in this case, what we're going to do is use a linked budget to add an increase in sales of what we hope is going to happen. So again, it's a very similar process to entering budgets in the base. We're going to use linked this time. And what we're going to do is we want to model 3% of some of our sales. So we have a few budgets that we entered in the base already. So I'm going to link to my sales A, and then I might add another percentage. Maybe I want to link 2% to my sales B. And we're going to add this in. So this budget is going to show you if you were to increase your sales by that percentage amount, and this is the sales budget that we're working on as our source budget, and this is the new budget that will add on to this. So for the purposes of the scenario, we can see the change over time if we increase those two budgets by the 2 and the 3%. Another way that you might want to model a situation is if you're planning to take on some new staff during the year, and that can also be done through the People Cost tab. A lot of people will want to do it in scenarios, especially if you've got extra costs and bits and pieces to add, but you can certainly do it under People Costs. This allows you to create the role, and if we look at this one that we've already created here, if I click into it, I can see we've put in their gross salary. There are some pre-populated fields that Float has filled in for you, but it also gives you the flexibility to add things that will be individual to your company. So maybe things like pensions or benefits. You can also enter recruitment costs or buying them a laptop or any other sort of cost that might incur, and then you can save the cost of taking on this person. This then sits on your main cash flow page in between the income and the cost section, People Costs here. And what you can do here, if I just toggle this on, it's toggled off by default, but it allows you at any point to say, okay, are we in a position to take this person on? Let's just see the impact of that. Perhaps not. We'll maybe save them for a later point in our company journey, but you can see immediately that it will affect your graph. I'll toggle this off just now. Another really interesting feature in Float is our threshold. So it's set to 0 by default, and this will just tell you if or when your cash flow is due to hit a certain point. And we can see that ours is going to go to 0 in about 4 months' time. But you don't actually need to keep it at 0. You might be working with an overdraft, for instance. So if we put in a 5,000 overdraft and save that, it immediately adjusts the line on the graph here. So it just shows us our runway, really. So we know that if we use our overdraft, we're probably not going to hit that point until 11 months now. So it just gives us a little flavour of how the cash flow is looking. You can change this at any point. Float is generally a monthly view. You can see it's broken down by months here, but we do have a weekly option, and that can be found at the top. The weekly cash flow is set out as a 13-week cash flow, and it really allows you to kind of dig in a little bit more to weekly figures. If you are going to use the weekly cash flow, it's good to be very granular with your budgets, and you may want to set these for weekly rather than monthly. From the main cash flow page, we also have the list view, and this is really good if you're looking at a dip or a peak in your cash flow and you can't quite figure out what might be causing that. We've got a dip here round about the end of July. This lays out all the transactions in chronological order, and then you can just zoom down to the relevant date, and that will tell you what's due to hit at that point. For us, it looks like it's just our wages. Looking at the other tabs across the top, we have a few things. Insights. This is something that you can dig into a little bit later, but the ones to pick out, overall income versus costs. This is much more top-line figures, but it will show you what you've got budgeted versus what your actuals are. This is for the cash flow as a whole. We also have scenario comparison. On the main graph, you'll only ever be able to see your base and one scenario, but on here you can add all your scenarios if you wish, or any combination, and they will all show on the one graph. We also have budget variance, and this again will show you if you've been over or under your budgets. We're not going to see too much here at the moment because it's a new account, but it will show you the divergence by value and also by percentage. If you're looking to share the figures in Float with anybody within your business, you might want to look at the export option, and that can be found from the top right here. We've got a new summary report, and you've also got the option to export the entire cash flow, and that will be to CSV or to PDF. If you ever have any questions about Float, we've got a few resources available. We've got a very comprehensive help centre which you can access from the top right here. And there's also our little chat function. It isn't live chat, but if you pop your question through, somebody will always help you and get back to you as soon as we can. And you can also email us at support@floatapp.com. So that wraps up today's webinar. Thanks for watching and have a great day.